Doom is almost 15 years old. Since then, it has changed so much that the last part of the franchise, Doom 3 Resurrection of Evil, couldn't be any further from the original concept. But Doom is a patient beast, and not until gamers catch up with the product will ID Software even begin to consider a fourth installment. With Doom, ID hasn't been wrong yet. Doom 3 carries all the swagger and arrogance of the first outing, and is cited by many as being the game Doom should have been. The truth is, Doom could have been many things, which makes it hard to validate that statement. Indeed, a strong argument can be made either way, so let's take a look at 1992 to see where it all started. ID Software circa 1992 was a very impressive place to be. Into its second year of independence, John Romero, Tom Hall, Adrian Carmack and John Carmack had proved that PCs could do more than WordStar. ID invoked magic with each piece of software it created, and garnered a savagely loyal following that was always impatient for new releases. A master of freeware distribution, ID soon learned the merits of episodic content, and so it funneled longevity into its titles by adding new worlds and levels to existing content. While working on the SNES port of Castle Wolfenstein, John Carmack stumbled across a routine that he believed would greatly speed up the development of 3D games. Soon this routine grew into the Doom engine and a new era of in-game design dawned. Debate ensued as to what sort of game would fit into the incomplete engine, with discussion veering toward acquiring the Alien license. However, the team agreed that a license would prove far too restrictive. ID made many great ideas, and while these were being fine-tuned, Carmack dubbed the undesigned game Doom. He attributes the title to a scene from The Colour of Money where Tom Cruise shows up at a pool game with a custom pool cue in the case. "What do you have in there?" someone asks him. "Doom," replied Cruise with a cocky grin. That and the resulting carnage was how I viewed us springing the game on the industry, remembers a proud John Carmack. Work originally started on Doom in late 1992. While John Carmack worked on the engine, John Romero would sketch out early level design on a clever editor that he had developed, while Adrian toiled over creating Doom's visual realisation. Tom Hall, ID's resident game designer, found it all hard going. For Tom, good games didn't just happen, they came from careful planning. So as the rest of ID forged ahead, he developed a Bible of all things that the game should contain. John Romero would add to this on occasion, but while everyone at ID was aware of the Bible, scant regard was paid to its actual contents. John Carmack underpins this, saying, "We worked from the technology toward the game." The style of play from Wolfenstein was clearly a good thing. In retrospect, it was the birth of an entirely new genre, and I had a plenty solid idea what the next step in technology was going to be. Arbitrary two-dimensional maps with variable floor and ceiling heights and table-based lighting. Theoretically, Doom was viewed as Aliens meets Evil Dead 2, he continues. Tom was attempting to do real design work at the beginning of the project, but the rest of the team was pretty much pushing ahead with a just do it approach, so careful planning was lost out. John Romero remembers this time slightly differently, however. Tom started crafting a storyline in November 1992 and created the Doom Bible, which turned out to be his initial ideas of where the story should go, he says. After that point, he mostly made lots of notes about ideas, drawings of the world map, sketches of the game characters and so on. So yes, there was a definite storyline created at the beginning of the project, and we all started following that design. Whatever the truth behind the Bible, Tom would be ID's first casualty due to its differences with John Carmack. Tom was eventually replaced by Sandy Peterson. An industry veteran, Sandy proved the perfect counterbalance for John Romero. While John Romero designed levels of pure adrenaline that reflected the apex of gaming from that era, Sandy's levels were much more sinister. Nothing was obvious, objects were littered throughout each level, but their uses were specific. If a player misused an object, the game got harder. Buttons the player had to press and doors that had to be opened would all unleash more hell spawn. This balance between the two designers ensured end users would never feel comfortable in Doom's horrific world. Bob Prince, a veteran from ID's back catalogue, was brought in to add sound to the game. Bob visited the office occasionally but was never in-house. His remoteness led him to Tom's Doom Bible, which became his inspiration for the music. What helped most with the sound in Doom was the Doom Bible that Tom Hall compiled, he confirms. Much of what was in it never appeared in the game, but it set a mood for starting on the project. Within a few months of receiving that document, I had roughed out a lot of the music and most of what turned out to be final sound effects. The sound process was far from linear on the fledgling game engine, and the challenges were vast. With Doom, I was supposed to have some software that allowed me to do this sort of thing, but it never got programmed, explains Bob. I depended on John Romero to plug the sounds in for me, and I could then see if they fit for timing. If they didn't, I would try to get a mental picture of what was wrong, correct it on my computer, save it on the network, and then John Romero would plug it in for another trial. That the sounds became such an integral part of the Doom experience is a tantamount to the technical genius ID possessed at the time. Away from ID and the development of Doom, the gaming press was going mad for a new format that was fast replacing disc and cartridge based systems, CD-ROMs. Myst and The Seventh Guest had turned heads the world over, with their incredible visuals demonstrating the power of the new medium. The US gaming media especially was talking about how gaming was about to change forever. With their full motion videos and CD sounds, talk of how Myst and The Seventh Guest would replace the iconic games of the 80s and early 90s populated magazines like Wired. Even the console manufacturers looked to be getting in on the act with new CD announcements. Jay Wilbur, ID's business manager, explored this technology and brought Myst to the guys at ID. Unanimous in its condemnation, ID hated Myst. Even Sandy, who had worked for years with Sid Meier at Microprose, didn't like it. Galvanised by the team, Jay set about trying to get some press for the unfinished Doom. Unfortunately, the gaming press weren't interested, and a short broadcast on local television showing ID guys at work did little to bolster Doom's profile. Knowing full well that the game would be a smash if people knew about it, Jay began selling Doom in a different way. "We don't care if you make money off this shareware demo," Jay told retailers. "Move it in mass quantities." The retailers couldn't believe their ears. No one had ever told them not to pay royalties. But Jay was insistent. "Take Doom for nothing, keep the profit. My goal is distribution. Doom is going to be Wolfenstein on steroids, and I want it far and wide. I want you to stack Doom high. In fact, I want you to do advertising for it too, because you're going to make money off it. So take this money that you might have given me in royalties and use it to advertise the fact that you're selling Doom." Jay got plenty of takers, and it was advertised by retailers right across America, from Walmart to Babbage's, known as GameStop. The original ID press release adorned the walls of retailers, stating that Doom would be ready for release in autumn 1993. At this time, details of the game were sparse except for the revelations that Doom would show visible monsters and scenery damage. Few screens were made available, but the ones that were made public showed some of the game's more spectacular weapons and monsters in action. The gaming press were quick to follow the retailers, acutely aware that something big was happening in our ID software. Previously closed doors were now opened, and column inches gave way to features and articles on the game. The groundswell didn't detract from the development. If anything, it made the team more resolute to deliver John Carmack's vision of something bigger, badder and better than everything that had gone before. Development continued swiftly, and in June 1993 the guys at ID Software had a meeting. Aware that it was going to miss its autumn release date, it looked at the game itself. Without a strict format or direction, Doom had taken on so many elements that it lacked purpose and an independent identity. The decision was made to narrow the experience. The score and all the elements that contributed to scoring points were removed from the game. A life bar replaced the 3-man allocation of the first beta builds, and the BFG, Big Fucking Gun, had its perimeters changed. Originally a modifiable spewing smart gun, it was honed to be a single shot weapon that would provide instant death on contact with any foes. More significantly, the game was honed as well. John Carmack explains why the game was changed and the issues that led to the slowdown in Doom's development. "Speed was an issue. One big ball is a ton more efficient than a couple of hundred little ones," he says. The other thing is that a spew of little balls that just wasn't that effective. Usually, only one or two would hit a given target at a reasonable range, so it didn't deliver that much damage against a single opponent. We wanted the BFG to be a weapon that obliterated rooms full of enemies, and no directed weapon ever really managed that. We originally had little items that you could collect to get an extra life, like coins in Super Mario, but it finally sunk in for me during Doom that computer games don't have to be like arcade games, and that the concept of limited numbers of tries just really didn't apply. The final crunch of Doom progressed, morphing from the early alpha builds that were demoed through magazines and download services into the game we know today. And as John Carmack welded the multiplayer elements into place that John Romero would later coin Deathmatch, ID realised that it had made one of the game's very few complete products. When Doom eventually arrived on 10th of December 1993, the ID server that was to deliver the game to the masses outside of retail crashed as 8,000 people clamoured for the first levels, and on commercial networks such as America Online users crammed into electronic rooms waiting for their chance to download the program. Depending on the speed of the user's modem, transfers took between 1 and 4 hours. It was a mob scene that night Doom came out, said Debbie Rogers, four-room leader of America Online's game section. If we weren't on the other side of a phone line, there would have been bodily harm. About 20,000 American Online users snapped up copies at launch. That, however, was just a start. Some 6 months later, ID realised figures stating that over 1.7 million copies of Doom were installed and in use across the US. The Doom creators had somehow ventured into the eye of the storm. It wasn't that Doom was selling, it was the fact that it was being played over and over. The term deathmatch entered the English language, and despite the fact that many gamers today still have not experienced Doom in LAN or on an online scenario, the legend of the experience grew.